Hello, welcome back to YCFT. It has been 10 years, give or take a few weeks, I can't remember what the exact release date was, but this year is the 10th anniversary of Prometheus.
Mm-hmm.
This film, I don't know a film that split fans as much as this one did.
I don't think there's anything that split us as much as this film has.
I'm a massive fan of this. You are not.
I am not.
I have been debating this with various friends group for 10 years.
Yep.
It's crazy how divisive this is, and I think on its anniversary, I'd say this doesn't really fall into horror as much as, say, the first Alien, but there is still some horror elements to it. This is much more of a sci-fi adventure, but I still think this film is worth talking about.
Yes.
This long, and how well has it aged?
Well, the thing is, I mean, it is indirectly connected to the Alien franchise.
Yeah.
So it is fair, I think, that we can talk about it in those
Interestingly,
terms.
Because this was supposed to be the start of a Prometheus trilogy.
Yes.
That hasn't happened, even before the Disney acquisition. But we'll briefly look at that, because I don't want to talk about Covenant too much. Because it doesn't directly affect this film. It does. It both does does. It affects what the plans for this film were. But this film is not intended to be the prequel to Alien.
No. Not the finished outcome, anyway.
No. The trilogy was meant to eventually lead, from what I've been able to gather, the end of the third film was going to loosely link to the beginning of Alien.
Mm-hmm.
So this is basically the prequel to the prequel to the prequel of Alien. So
yeah.
I think, in many ways, it's actually the perfect prequel that passes the prequel test. I'm going to put an example out there. Monsters University. Prequel to Monsters, Inc. There is so much that happens in that film that you will not get if you've not watched Monsters, Inc. That's not a very good prequel. The 2011 The Thing. You can watch that without watching John Carpenter's The Thing. There's not that much that links to it. Obviously, it leads directly into it. This film, you can watch this film without seeing Alien, and it still works as a completed film.
Prometheus, I guess, it's still within the same universe, I suppose, as Alien.
Yeah.
Like, literally.
But without directly...
in the same universe. But it is very much its own thing.
Yeah. Without directly linking to Alien, that does make it just its own film, and it's basically then a perfect prequel. There's stuff that you will benefit from knowing the Alien universe, but if this was the first film you watched you're going to get just as much out of it, in my opinion.
I think just the word prequel probably throws a few people off.
Yeah.
Because when you say prequel, I think people automatically assume, this is going to be like set maybe a few days or something.
No, this is set 100 years
exactly.
before Alien.
Or, there's going to be a lot more familiarity between Alien and Prometheus in terms of like the set design or, anything else. But there isn't.
They do share one thing in common, and that is...
very stylistically, tonally, these are two very different films.
Yeah. The main thing they share in common is Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
I love and dislike a lot of his work. I think he can be quite hit and miss, but he knows how to give us a spectacle. And I feel like he used all his Hollywood pull on this film because it looks great.
Visually,
we'll get into that later, but the origin of this film actually do date all the way back to Alien and the reactions to Alien.
It begins with Alien,
It begins with this guy, yeah.
It begins with this little guy here. So, Alien 1979, obviously the famous scene before John Hurt's Kane gets the face hugger. When they go into the ship.
Spoilers for Alien.
Oh, yeah. If you haven't seen Alien,
there's going to be spoilers for
this,
Prometheus as well.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, and if you remember, before the face hugging happens, they encounter this big dude.
I believe that he's known as just the pilot.
They indirectly refer to him as the space jockey.
The space jockey,
That was the name that Ridley Scott and co. kind of referred to him. I can't remember what they call him in the film. But basically, they find this, what appears to be an exoskeleton of another species of alien that has been fossilised, and he's had his chest burst open. Now, interestingly, this design was actually based off, like everything else in Alien, H.R. Geiger. Now, Geiger didn't create this for the film. This was something that he did many, many years before. Ridley Scott looked at the design and thought, that's fantastic, I want that in my movie. It's in the movie. He had to fight for it too, because studio said no.
Yeah, most of it throughout the Alien universe is straight from Geiger.
It's straight from Geiger.
And he tells, have you ever seen Species?
Yes, I have seen Species.
like the creature in Species is basically a xenomorph in design when you look at it, and he also did design it.
He did design it. Yeah, you're right.
I think it's the way he does the body and the limbs
Very
in particular.
like biomechanical and
like
stuff.
these, like they all have this sort of look about biomechanical. That is the best way to describe them.
Yeah, and anyway, Ridley Scott apparently said over the years he was always a bit disappointed that people didn't ask more questions about this guy, this pilot, this space jockey, whatever it is, because obviously people got so distracted by the xenomorph and whatever happened in Alien. He was always a bit put out that no one started asking questions about him. What was this guy's story? Who was he? And I suppose Ridley Scott then always intended at some point to kind of circle back round to this and answer those questions.
It's believed that at the time of filming, in his mind, he knew what it was.
Yeah.
And we've seen like various bits that do hint to what his idea for it was decades ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, he wanted us to ask more questions about that, but we were too distracted by the perfect killer that is the xenomorph.
So yeah, many years later, first draft is written by a guy called John Spates. Now he writes the script for Prometheus, but the script that Spates writes is a prequel to Alien. We've everything we just said about Prometheus, how it isn't really a prequel. This guy's version was. It was going to be much more connected. It was going to have xenomorphs in. It was going to have a lot of face hugging in and all that malarkey. Ridley Scott then decides that even though he wants to do a prequel in terms of the timeline, he doesn't want his next film to be so closely correlated to Alien. Yeah. And so he hires a guy called Damon Lindelof.
Alien was the only film in the Alien quadrilogy that he directed.
Yeah. Obviously we got Cameron, then we had Fincher, and then I can't remember who did Resurrection.
I can't remember it all either.
No.
Was it not?
Forget Resurrection. Everyone likes to forget Resurrection.
Vampire Slayer guy, or did he just write on it?
I think he wrote on it. I don't think Whedon directed it. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But Whedon was connected to it in some way. So anyway, yeah, this guy Damon Lindelof is hired to rewrite that script, and ultimately makes a much more disconnected film from Alien 1979.
I think it benefits from that.
That
I guess
is
just because of the issues I tend to have with prequels.
Yeah.
Because then you basically are just retreading. What I like about Alien is we just happened upon an alien ship in the middle of space.
Yeah.
By doing a direct prequel to it, you start to lead into this idea that, it was fate, they had to do it, or we ended up doing something which eventually led to the Nostromo being there. There's always that broader thing, the fact that the ship's computer mother has the crew expendable order.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Earth clearly has, or the Weyland-Yutani Corporation has something that they have to do when alien species are encountered, whether that's because they've been encountered before, or just in case.
Yeah.
But for me, a prequel, I think, would take away that question. A direct prequel.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I mean, also just in terms of timeline, just so we can try and not confuse anybody. The Expedition of Prometheus, this film, is 2093. Alien 1979 takes place in 2122. So there's not a drastic time difference by any means, but there is a significant jump. So Prometheus, we start with 2093.
Yeah. Should we briefly go over what the plot is?
Yeah.
So
you go. You love this movie. You go.
I do. And it starts with
it.
Noomi Rapace's Dr. Elizabeth Shaw and her boyfriend,
Partner, I guess. Yeah.
Logan Marshall Green, I think his name is.
Basically, he's Tom Hardy.
He looks a bit like Tom Hardy.
He looks the spit of Tom Hardy.
They have this theory that we were created, that these creatures called engineers created us, and they base this on cave paintings. Yeah. Cave paintings that have been made thousands of years apart from each other, all over Earth. Civilizations had absolutely zero communication with each other, but all have these tall beings that are being prayed to by little beings, assuming to be us, pointing towards some stars in the sky. And through modern tech, they find a star system that matches that. And they say it was so far away that at the time we couldn't have known about them.
Yeah.
So they find a moon in that system that can hold life. So they assume that this is an invitation.
Yeah, they do.
They managed to convince Peter Weyland.
Yes, Weyland-Yutani.
No. What he's just Wayland. Utani
Wayland.
was a separate part of the merger,
Yeah.
so he's Peter Wayland. He was played in AVP by, the actor who played Bishop.
Yeah, Lance
That character is
Henriksen.
also Peter Wayland.
Yeah, he's
but
in
obviously
Aliens 3 and as well.
He's in Aliens 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he played Peter Wayland
Yeah,
in
yeah,
AVP.
yeah.
That timeline scrapped.
Yeah.
Although later on we will discuss there are some possible links to AVP. Basically, being an aging man, they managed to convince him to fund an expedition
to this particular
system. Place to discover essentially God, the gods that created us.
And I think the key thing is that it's these expeditionists or like archaeologists? They're scientists and archaeologists, but it's their hope that when they travel to this solar system, this moon, that they are going to encounter these engineers very much alive.
Yeah.
They have questions.
They believe that it has been left there for when we become advanced enough to seek them out.
Yeah.
And Peter Wayland is basically he says he is days from death.
Yeah, it's Guy Pearce and absolutely shocking all day.
It is.
I can't defend shocking.
That. I can contextualize it.
Yeah.
But I can't defend it.
No, it's bad. It's Benjamin Button.
It is. So yeah, so they go and it's a 2-year journey. They're in hypersleep to be able to get there and investigate this planet. When they get there, they basically find a tomb.
Yes.
The engineers that they looked for are dead. And alien-esque things occur.
Alien-esque things do occur.
Well, going on to cast. So yeah, we do have Guy Pearce as Peter Wayland. Yes, I can't defend the old age makeup. It looks bad.
It's awful.
I know the reason behind it. There were some scenes that even weren't in the deleted scenes that I know about. Oh yeah, shocker, he is also on the ship in hypersleep.
Yeah.
Unknown to the rest of the crew apart from Charlize Theron's character, which is his daughter, which really doesn't play into that much, and David, an android played by Michael Fassbender. He is the star of this film. Michael Fassbender.
Yeah,
I think he is.
You mean in terms of performance?
Yeah, he's absolutely. I'd say both. I like his character more than most of the human characters.
Yeah,
I think his performance
one
is
of the most interesting.
Top notch. He's the most interesting. He has spent 2 years on his own looking after the crew. Obviously, he's different from the android we see in Alien. He's basically the prequel to that one, but. He's kind of dismissed as just a robot, but he's clearly more than that. Peter Wayland directly calls him his son.
Yeah.
He's been on his own watching their dreams for 2 years. We've been watching movies. We see him watching Lawrence of Arabia. He styles his hair to match it. He quotes Phil. He's had 2 years of development.
Well, he's trying to learn about humanity.
Trying to be more
He's
human.
very intelligent. He's very scientific. He's very mathematical. Like, he can do all of those core things, but really anybody can learn those things. But what obviously he struggles with, I guess, is more like the more emotional side, like how to interact with humans, how to understand humans. So that's what he's been over the last 2 years. He's been trying to like accumulate as much knowledge.
At the same time, he's been studying languages. Yeah, because he's basically studying the languages based on the civilizations that made these paintings, and assuming that you could bring them all together, like basically trying to deconstruct language down to its earliest form, would give him the best chance of, if they do encounter an engineer, being able to communicate with it. Which it's pretty sound logic, really. Yeah. Because assuming when they came and visited us, they'd want to communicate with us in some way. Yeah. Michael Fassbender's David, absolutely.
He's a great actor.
But I know there was supposed to be a scene where he would go into the dreams of Peter Wayland. It's kind of hinted at, and in those dreams he would be young, because in your dreams, why would he dream himself as an old man? And going forward, in the future films, there were going to be scenes with Peter Wayland when he was much younger, showing the creation of David. So that they initially cast Guy Pearce to show him as a young man throughout the rest of the trilogy, but it just doesn't work for me. I'd rather they just cast an old man. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
Unless you have knowledge of the deleted scenes, and that shouldn't be a rule for any film.
No. We will talk about the deleted scenes.
Yeah.
But it is important just that we look at the film as it was released to us.
As it was released, exactly. And to someone watching it for the first time, well, even now, it's still jarring to see Guy Pearce as that. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. It kind of takes you out of it quite a lot.
Yeah, I really like Charlize Theron's character.
Charlize Theron's really great.
A bit underdeveloped because of stuff that was cut, but I think she just gives her best anyway. We have Idris Elba in a small role as the ship's captain, which I believe later on becomes more of an important role than you do.
Yeah.
A very young Benedict Wong, supporting role.
Forget he's in it.
Uh,
He's got like one line in the whole film.
There's at least two. Also, like I said before, I really like Noomi Rapace.
I also like Noomi Rapace. She's also a good actress. And I think out of the crew of the Prometheus, she's not really crew, but obviously she's part of the thing. She is, again, like she is interesting and probably one of the most likable, if not the most likable, I guess. Even though she is incredibly flawed in her own way, and does make some bad decisions.
Yeah. Well, so did John Hurt.
So do all of them. Oh yeah, not denying it.
So does Ripley by letting them on the ship.
Ripley doesn't let them on the ship.
Well, she doesn't stop them very well.
It's Ash that lets them.
Yeah, she could have went full Charlize Theron with a flamethrower, but she didn't.
How do they? Is there a flamethrower on the Nostromo?
Oh, there definitely will be. There'll be some kind of. Anyway. I just want to kind of start into the bits that I really like.
Okay.
The film looks amazing.
Oh, look, this is like one of those things where, for anyone who doesn't like Prometheus, I don't think anyone can deny that visually it is a spectacle.
Ridley can give us
it is a treat. Like all those landscape shots at the very beginning, where you see the engineer, which I think they filmed it in Iceland, didn't they? Those landscape
a lot of scenes
shots.
in Iceland and Scotland.
And Scotland, yeah. I mean, it looks gorgeous.
It does. There's a lot of like even when we get to the alien planet, it's a lot of real settings with additional real settings comped into the background.
Yeah.
So for me, even the because usually like, after 10 years, like if you let's look at other films that came out at that time, Avengers, for example, some of the effects in that are starting to look a little more dated.
Yeah.
I don't see that with Prometheus. I think because there's actually so much real in this, especially these massive sets like the engineer's like room, the cockpit, and the ceremonial chamber with big head.
Big head. These
massive set pieces have given natural echo when they're in there, which I think is just a nice little bit of design to make it feel real. And we've got even when we watch it, again, talk about looking at deleted scenes, there's only one that kind of has like unfinished VFX, and that's just like screens being comped. But then there's a lot of them like, there's actually a lot less VFX in this film than I initially believed. And I think that's why it's aged so well.
Yeah, I mean...
I said earlier, I think you could release this today, and I think it just looks just as good as it did in 2012.
It does look good. Yeah, I can't deny that.
Score's amazing.
Really good. I do like the score. I mean, even the engineers themselves, you'd probably be forgiven for thinking that there's like maybe a little bit of CGI or something, because I always think they look really smooth, and that was clearly just something, I don't know, that was
a design choice.
That was a design choice, but it's all makeup, it's all prosthetics, it's really tall guys,
really tall actor with some forced perspective as well. He isn't his first tirade into the Alien franchise, the guy who played the engineer. He played a Predator in both AVP films.
Predator, was he Scar?
I think he played Scar and Wolf.
It's all connected, guys.
It's all connected.
It's all small worlds,
Yeah.
But yeah, that is well, you obviously like a lot more than just the visual.
Yeah,
element
but I think that's like
film.
Usually it's one of the things you can say to someone who doesn't like films there, but it looks fucking great.
Yeah, it does.
I mean,
that's not enough.
Yeah, but it's a shit film though, and it's like, well, you got to give me more than that. Debate me with this. Like,
I'm happy to debate. I will also say though that just because someone who doesn't like a film, the landscape shots or the spectacle of it, it's not enough. It's not enough to make someone go back to that film. Yes, it looks great, but I think my issue, and I do think for a lot of other people out there, the issue is with the plot itself. And I think
plot and the characters.
It's the plot and it's the characters. And I think with Prometheus, my issues, there's a few, but like you can kind of split it into two parts. Like I have issues with the general kind of, I don't know, ideas that the film represents, but I also have issues with it as a film. Like, I think the characters are dumb. I think the screenplay is not good. There is some really terrible and cheesy, lazy dialogue that we have in this film. So yeah, kind of like, there's a lot of stuff I think to talk about. There's a lot of ground to cover here.
Interestingly, after we watched it last night in preparation for us, it is fresh.
Yes.
I asked you if there was anything you liked better this time around, because I want to point out, since we got together, you have watched this film 4 times now. Only 2 of those times were with me.
Well, you got to understand as well, I have seen this film, I think I first watched it when it came out. I didn't go and see it in the cinema, but we did get it on DVD because like my mum is a big Alien fan.
Your mum does not like this film.
What was the quote she said on the phone to me?
It's an insult to.
It's an insult to my eyes, to my ears, and to my intelligence. That's a quote from Mandy, my mum. Anyway, like I've seen this film more often than I should probably. Yeah. I don't understand why I've seen this film.
I don't get why you've watched it 2 times without me. What
to kind of fuel the hatred.
One of those times. You were living here.
I know. I know.
So this is a point I have about this
We
film.
talked about this film on our very first date.
We did.
We debated it.
And I made you watch it on my birthday. It's something that I think a quality this film has, that when it's on, the spectacle alone, I think, is enough to make people sit down and watch it, or at least not turn it off. There's something about this film that just makes it very watchable.
I mean, I think, we've joked about it, that ultimately, Prometheus is probably a much more interesting film to debate than it is to actually sit down and watch for 2 hours.
Yeah, the themes and the ideas of it are very, very interesting. I actually had this idea when we were watching it last night. Because we watched a lot of videos like explaining various things. Because it's been a long time since I've watched it. Obviously not watched it the additional 2 times you have over the past 3 years.
Yes.
A lot of it, you get a lot of the plot holes and things. You can kind of think away. With enough time, and the themes, I think, get more interesting when you start thinking and discuss them. Maybe when it first came out, your average cinema goer just doesn't want to have to think. Which I get that. Sometimes I go to a film and I just want to turn my brain off and enjoy.
Enjoy a movie.
I think this is actually a more complex piece of sci-fi than I think people were prepared for. Because I think let's look at the space that Alien was in at this time. Aliens, as much as it's amazing, does turn it into an action movie, and they tried to go a bit more sci-fi, didn't they? We have AVP, which were very much action movies. Mm-hmm. A lot of people probably went to see this film expecting an action movie, and it's not.
That's fair.
It's a slow burn.
It's also not really a horror film like we established as well.
There's some body horror in it.
Yes.
And I do think this is a movie that is better when you just sit and think about it. But maybe that's just not what people wanted when they went to see it.
I think that's a fair point. A lot of people were probably... some people do, it's just their preference. They want to go and see a movie. They just want to be entertained. They don't want to be forced into, thinking about things. And, that is a fair point. I think one of the reasons, genuinely, why I probably have watched it a lot, even though I dislike it as a film, is because the first few times I was confused by it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of plot holes in this film that you don't learn, first time around. You kind of need to watch it again to kind of piece what exactly is what's going on here. Why is that there? And that
could be down to there is a bit of choppy editing in this. I think
there is, but I actually think that's probably a part of it. I mean, I remember being younger and debating why did that happen, and my family and friends we were all confused. We all had different ideas and theories, and I do also think that...
Isn't that part of the fun, though, being able to discuss those ideas?
I think there's merit sometimes in films where there is a bit of ambiguity and it is a bit nebulous and, it is open to interpretation. But at the same time, I think Prometheus opens so many doors and it suggests so many things and it ponders so many big, lofty things, but there's zero conclusion to any of them. That's a bit of a problem for me.
I like that.
Oh, well, it's personal preference, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Again, thinking ahead that they were going to do a trilogy. To me, let's cast Covenant aside.
Yeah.
I've came to my own conclusions at the ending of this film. So if it stays as its own, I'm still perfectly happy with that, and I'm happy with the conclusions that I've came to. I've kind of lost the point that I was going to make.
That's what happens.
I said it does have a lot of big ideas and is left quite ambiguous, but the type of themes it's dealing with could have been more controversial if they did try to provide an answer to them. Because it's a big theme of being disappointed in your creator.
Yeah.
Inevitably, David is disappointed in Wayland, his creator. He's disappointed in humanity, especially after watching them for 2 years.
Yeah.
He now believes himself to be superior.
Yeah.
Peter Wayland believes himself to be superior to the rest of humanity because he created life.
He sees himself as a kind of god.
As a kind of god, even though there's kind of a theme of what I kind of got from that was that's kind of strange because obviously women create life all the time.
Yeah.
How is what David has made or what Peter has made
in a lab
any different to what the human body does naturally? He has spent years and years and billions to do this to what a woman can do in 9 months naturally.
Yes.
That just shows like the type of character that he is.
Yes, yeah, his mindset.
We find out that obviously the engineers were, before whatever accident happened that killed them, were planning to come to Earth to destroy us. So they are disappointed in their creation. But then when we find them and they're all dead and we find out they aren't gods, disappointed in that. So it's just disappointment all.
Disappointed. There's a theme
There's a
of
theme
Prometheus.
all around.
Theme
And
of
there's
the film
a
when
line
you
to
watch
do
the
when he goes mortal after all. To an extent, like, even David is kind of disappointed in the engineers.
Yes. God's creation, life. Why are we here? What was the purpose?
Yeah. They do like this line of Shaw when because Charlie struggles with it more than her. He wanted to find them alive. He wanted to speak to them to find out why.
Yeah.
And he's basically just, in his mind, we were a petri dish. Earth was a petri dish. We were just created and then left.
See, the characters is kind of like, we need to go through the characters, like a lot of them, but he is one of the biggest issues.
Yeah.
He is so annoying and it's so unnecessary, his attitude. And I kind of see it from, a writing perspective, how you need to have different, you need to reflect different viewpoints and different personalities and
That's
stuff
why I always
like
find
that.
interesting
But
with
his
Shaw
is-
especially.
He is so jarring and...
I find it interesting. Obviously, she is a very religious person, but she's also
she
a
wears
scientist.
that cross, doesn't she?
It's almost like her faith is what drives the things she wants to discover, which makes her opinion very biased. But there's a line that I quite like from her, because when Charlie almost confronts her, oh, you don't need to wear your dad's cross anymore.
Yeah.
She's like, why not? It's like, well, we know they created us. And it's like, well, who created them then?
Who created them?
But it's the never-ending thing. If you find out who created them, then it's who created them, who created them. Her faith will forever push her to find out more. And like a big part of this film is faith versus science.
Yeah.
And can the two, I think she is an example of the two kind of working together. The science proves, she uses the science to prove her faith.
Yeah, there's a lot of religious, almost biblical ideas that are kind of thrown into this film. And then it's also the fact that the whole expedition takes place around Christmas time.
Yeah.
As well. And you've got that little scene where Idris Elba, the captain, he's got this tiny little Christmas tree and he's putting, his baubles on, stuff like that. And the very final scene, the last day of the expedition takes place on New Year's Day. And, there's all this stuff connected to the Bible and religion and God and Jesus and, all this stuff.
Is that realization that they weren't gods?
Yeah, they weren't gods. It's like my initial reaction to this, and again, I think this is just personal preference, is who cares? Who cares? Like, this is still the greatest scientific discovery that that has ever happened in the history of science.
And that's what kind of splits the crew, isn't it? Obviously, Charlie's like, well, no one's going to believe the 2,000-year-old fossil. We can't change everyone's minds based on this. Well, even if you brought one back alive, people aren't going to believe it.
Yeah.
It is the greatest discovery, but it affects them all differently.
It affects them all
a couple
in
of crew
ways.
who are there are just freaked out at the idea that they actually found an alien alive. Like,
right. Yeah, that's those. Right. At some point, we will get onto the characters. Yeah, but yeah, go on.
I'd finish that. I actually follow on for the biblical area. I always had this feeling while watching it several times that obviously there had to be a reason that they were done with us. That we must have done something that meant that they were disappointed with us, and there's a line from David's like, sometimes to create you must destroy.
Yeah.
And they clearly had an intention of just wiping us out and starting again. Maybe because Earth is a perfect place for life.
Yeah.
And we see obviously at the very beginning of the film, an engineer sacrifices his life and his DNA is put into the water, which kick-started life on the planet. Which that is a scientific theory that life was, or the building blocks of life were brought to Earth, potentially on like an asteroid or something like that. Something might have kick-started life.
Yeah.
And I always had this idea of what if, just because of the religious overtones, what if Jesus was an engineer? The story's been twisted over time, and the reason they wanted to kill us is because they came to visit us and we killed one of them.
I mean, is that something that Ridley Scott definitively said that he wanted to?
It was. I think it might have been Damon Lindelof said that he wanted, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I came up with this conclusion myself, and then that conclusion was backed up in research that was an idea that one put in, but they thought it would have been too on the nose.
Yeah, these giant white bald men.
Jesus is always portrayed as white.
Jesus was not bald. I also don't think he was 9'6" tall.
But I think
He'd have stood out like a sore thumb in
there
Bethlehem.
there is merit in this idea that they might have been disappointed with us because we killed one of them when they came to visit us. Because of the different civilizations, they must have visited us several times to see what our development was. So what if we did something then that was so disappointing to them that, all right, we've got to start this again?
Well,
because there's other themes of we're just very unclean compared to them.
Well, look, I know at the end, and again, big spoilers, but at the very end where she's the only one left, her and David, is David's head, and she's so consumed with this knowledge now that, they created us and then they tried to destroy us, and I have to know why. Like, this is just her mission now. She needs to find out why. And even David is like, well, does it matter? Like, at the end of the day, does it matter? And
that's another point. Does any of it matter?
It doesn't matter. Does it really matter?
Isn't that the point?
It's like, the other guy as
whether they found it, whether they found out or not. Outside of this ship and this mission, does any of it matter?
No. My personal preference, I guess, or like what I choose to believe, because again, it's unanswered, guys, is engineers, they created us. We didn't turn out the way they wanted, so they just thought, oh, fuck you guys, we're going to start again.
Yeah.
We're going to start again. And I'm content with that.
Yeah.
I know she's obviously much more religious than I am, and she probably can't accept that knowledge. Maybe she thinks that there's a deeper reason.
Looking into the Bible, that are instances like with Noah, where God has wiped the slate clean.
Fuck everyone else, but I like you. So, you're going to be all right, you and your animals. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this kind of like comes to the crux overall of like, I think a lot of people's biggest problem with Prometheus, it promotes these big, grand, kind of lofty biblical ideas, and yet it's almost like the ideas are too big for the film that it's actually in, because we've also got so many characters. Like, it's almost bloated. It's almost like Prometheus itself.
The film's ideas flew too close to the sun.
Flew too close to the... Oh, it's Icarus.
Which one's Prometheus? Oh, no, Prometheus.
I don't know.
No, isn't Prometheus the one that stole fire from the gods?
I don't know.
And gave it to us.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was.
I actually don't know anything about the Prometheus side of it. Like, the actual origin of the god.
I believe that's what it was.
Interesting. Okay. But yeah, I think
at that point started off wrong, but I led it to something that works.
It's too...
I believe he stole fire from the gods and gave it to man.
That's what you just choose to believe.
Yeah.
It's just that there's too many big... It's almost to the point where the film comes across as pretentious in like its ideas and its message.
But it's not.
But
compared to other films that are very big and pretentious, they like to shove the idea down your throats. I think this film does. It leaves you to just ponder them yourself.
But then this is where my issue with it as like a filmmaking criticisms also bleed into this now, because you've got these huge ideas, these big, lofty, very ambitious ideas in a film, and the film itself ain't that great, because now we've got characters that we all have issues with. We've got bad dialogue. We have a film that is not quite a horror, but still tries to kind of shoehorn it in some moments. And that's where the two kind of combine here for me.
I mean, you say shoehorn in the horror, and to me,
I think the film
I think the film, from the minute they step in to that building, something bad is going to happen. You can feel it just slowly building to some moment, and the moments do scale. So I don't think it's shoehorned in there. This expedition was destined to fail, and from the minute they go in there,
absolutely,
it's going to happen. The building even tells us itself, because as the storm starts, a big face on the top of it turns into a fucking skull right before the first character dies. The film is telling us what is about to happen.
I think arguably you could say that the film was destined to fail the moment they decided that they were going to base this $1 trillion expedition on a cave painting. That it's her interpretation is that it's an invitation. There is no scientific basis for that whatsoever. They go to this moon based on an idea, on a theory, and that is it.
That is part of like a
belief.
Her belief, but also Peter Whalen's desperation for immortality. How he believes so much that he deserves immortality. And there's a line that Charles Theron says, like, the king has his reign and then he dies.
It's inevitable.
He's not done yet. Because let's be fair, they might have gone to, I imagine this time, there's many other companies that do space travel.
Yeah.
And the reason they went is purely down to the ego of this old man with too much money.
Yeah.
And his ego, like I say, his egos are too big. He just doesn't He believes he is a god.
He believes
and
he
he
deserves
believes
more.
that this is his last chance. These scientists are his last chance for him to get what he believes is his.
Yeah.
That's how I justify the expedition in the first place. Also, we're in the era with space travel. Like the Nostromo, that trip, they're gone for years at a time for theirs, and they're literally just hauling ore. I believe as soon as cryosleep is made, I believe long space travel just becomes like the norm.
It becomes the norm. And when you think about it, like this is, as we said at the beginning, it's set in 2093, the expedition. It's not like too drastically far into the future from where we are now.
No.
You know, when you think about it. I still think it's a bit too far off for that to be realistic, but I mean, it's still within
It's
our
like far enough
century.
away that I kind of like that it's not encroaching on the alien films. But
Yeah.
it's kind of like when you look at
Back to the Future.
back 2015
Yeah,
in Back to the Future.
it definitely is. I think also, just going back to what you're saying there, like, this is again personal preference. For me, I'm just always a bit disappointed when really it comes down to the whole basic plot of Prometheus comes down to the fact that you've got some really rich old guy that funds this $1 trillion expedition just because he's afraid of dying. That, you can literally sum it up right there. That is why this plot comes into being. It's an old man that doesn't want to die. That's it.
He's literally going out on a whim on a couple of cave paintings.
To me, that is inherently a bit disappointing.
But isn't that the theme of the film is disappointment?
I know that.
So
we all feel it when we watch it as well.
The theme is disappointment in the discoveries and your creators, and it gets more reason for David to be disappointed. It's why Charlize Theron Vickers is disappointed in her father. David is disappointed in her father because he just will not accept that his time is over.
Yeah.
It leads into the themes of the film.
Shall we talk a bit about the characters?
Yes.
Shall we talk about the
Let's
characters?
talk about some characters.
All right. Shall we?
Because we haven't even got to like the temple room and the goo.
No, I think right. Let's chat a bit about them, and then maybe that'll help to talk about specific scenes that we have them in. So, all of them act like high school kids in their own way. They're all stupid. They all throw tantrums. None of them seem to be taking the scientific expedition fully seriously, aside from Shaw, primarily. But let's stop. So we have Shaw. So we've got Elizabeth Shaw. So she is ruled by her own personal beliefs. She is religious. She's also consumed with this wonder at the end of the film as to why they tried to destroy us. So she's the one that kind of goes through a main arc, I suppose, throughout the film. I don't really have an issue with Shaw as a character. I do think she makes some bad decisions, but she's not the worst one.
That's just being human.
By far. That's just being human. But then we have Holloway, who is her partner. Romantic partner and work partner. Charlie, the Tom Hardy guy.
He is a very flawed character, and I don't particularly like him.
Acts like a spoilt child. Again, you know, that thing where they make this greatest scientific discovery the world has ever seen,
and he's
disappointed because he couldn't find one alive. He's unnecessarily hostile to David from the very beginning.
Yeah.
He calls David boy. He doesn't even address him by his name.
From what I can get, again, I think this might just be down to the editing, because later on, you kind of there's like a Pinocchio. I think it's meant to be a Pinocchio reference, because he does another one later on, Real Boy. So that's what I think, that's why I think he calls him boy, as a Pinocchio reference.
As a Pinocchio reference.
That's just my guess.
Either way.
But again, it's like, I imagine back then, even Android technology is probably a bit early on, and they probably do just dismiss him as a robot.
Maybe.
Because he says, like, he says he doesn't feel anything to him later on in the film. So it's like, how can you be, in his mind, how can you be offensive to something that doesn't feel?
To me,
he's like a toaster.
Kind of, yeah. But he is unnecessarily hostile.
He is.
And all around.
I won't go as far as to say hostile towards
He's rude.
him. He's rude. Yeah, but I won't call him like...
He is rude.
Yeah, it's not like Ripley towards Bishop in Aliens.
No.
She is hostile towards him because she doesn't trust him. He's just dismissive is the best way.
He's dismissive. But ultimately, he makes for a very unlikable...
Yeah.
And quite disinteresting character.
The most interesting thing about him is that he gets infected.
And you did make the point when we were watching it recently that he does kind of have a redeeming arc, I suppose.
Moment.
He has a redeeming moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. How heavy into specific spoilers do we go?
It's 10 years old. We know he gets infected. He gets infected. Well, David infects him. But I think we need to move on to that after we've talked about the room where we find the urns. So we got Vickers.
We do have Vickers, who for me, Again, it's a shame because the deleted scenes actually made her much more of an interesting
It's the same.
character.
I'm gonna lump her in with Idris Elba because I think there's two scenes that involve the pair of them
Yeah.
that I think actually make them a lot more interesting. I love Idris Elba anyway. I think he's good in anything that he does, but he's not a big presence in this film.
No, he's not a big presence in this film. And, you know, again, this is a film that has, I think, personally, too many characters for us to pay any particular attention to, whilst it's also trying to balance these other huge ideas. I don't know. For me, it doesn't necessarily work. Vickers should have been an interesting character.
Yeah.
There should have been an arc that the character could go on. Maybe even a redemptive arc in the end. We don't get that. She's hostile when we first meet her. She's very power hungry, very power driven. We find out she's Wayland's daughter.
Doesn't
That
really change.
doesn't really change anything.
Although in the alternate version, the scene that we watched that was the alternate version of the one where she confronts her father. I think that works a lot better.
Yeah.
I don't know why they changed that.
That's what I mean. The deleted scenes actually make her a bit more interesting.
Yeah,
But ultimately, she
her
doesn't
best-
even need to be there.
Again, we'll get onto that point. What the point that I think makes her essentially not. I need to phrase what I was about to say, like better than Ripley, but in one particular moment deals with a certain situation in a way Ripley didn't.
In a way that Ripley didn't, but also different missions,
Different missions, yeah.
different mindsets.
But what she did in that moment was entirely the right thing to do.
Oh, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, other characters we got. I always forget the name of the two scientists.
Milburn and
Yeah,
Fifield.
I was kind of calling them like Tweedledee and Tweedledee in my head
That's a
because they're fools. But
Tweedledee
one of them,
and
like,
Tweedledee.
uh,
They're fucking dickheads.
what's their names again?
Fifield and Milburn.
Fifield. You're right. He's extremely hostile from the get go.
Oh my god! So he's played by a British actor called Sean Harris, and who is a really good actor. But I don't know. Again, this
He's
screenplay.
like, I'm here for money.
I'm not here to make friends. It's like, what the
Yeah.
fuck is that? Why have a character with that attitude? He's not even a main character.
Yeah,
It's like it doesn't really even come into play. It's
this is
just
part of the thing that we
Oh, it's
discussed.
poor writing.
Comparing to
That's
the
what
crew
it
of the
is.
Nostromo, who have been on many missions together, they're basically a small family.
Yeah.
This crew are just come out of cryosleep and basically meeting each other for the first time. You
Yeah.
asked why on such an important expedition would this crew not be told what they are doing?
Yes, that is.
I
fair
believe
point.
I came up with a very good point as to why. And it comes back to the ego of Peter Wayland. I believe that he would be a very paranoid person, being so powerful and wanting the secret of immortality, probably constantly dealing with attacks from other companies to get to the next big thing before him. I think in his mind, if he thought there was wind as to what their mission was, that would lead to someone being on the ship ready to sabotage that mission. So to him, only himself, obviously David and his daughter, know the true mission, because obviously you've got Holloway and Shaw who don't know the real agenda, but they know why they're going, kind of know why they're going there. Everyone else is just kind of, in his mind, is just there to do a job if they're picked because of their skill set without being told what the job really is. Again, this could be in an era where space travel is fairly common. So it's like, yeah, we need a geologist on this expedition. You're going to be gone for 2 years. Great. It's a great paycheck. Sweet. That is my logic as to why they aren't aware of what they're there for. It's to avoid, in his mind, to avoid espionage.
Yeah. It's a good reason. It is a good justification. I also just personally think that how important this mission is to Wayland, how much is riding on this mission, I find it very improbable that not one of that crew received any kind of basic training before they went away.
We'll say that.
None of them received training in like basic combat if it was needed.
Well,
in
that's it. We
weapon
do have
training.
a security team. So in theory, we don't spend a lot of time with his security team. Maybe they at least know that he is there.
I feel like some kind of vetting would, if this was real, some kind of vetting or training would have happened. But anyway, that's one of what's one
his
issue.
Main ally in this.
One issue in
To
the
him,
plot.
all he needs is David for this, because Vickers wasn't even initially supposed to be there.
No,
She's there purely because she's like, I'm not just going to wait around and argue about who's in charge while you gallivant off into space trying to find immortality.
You know what? Sorry, this is a sidebar. Something I read before. You know the original script for Prometheus before Lindelof came. Vickers was a very different character, and she didn't want to be a part of the expedition. She was called in on Wayland's request, and by doing that, that stopped her from taking over as CEO of Wayland Corporations, which that's why she's bitter.
I would have preferred they went on that.
She doesn't want to be on the ship. Also, she was an older character as well.
Yeah.
She was much more kind of age appropriate to be his daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, I just thought that was a bit interesting. Vickers, unfortunately, is an interesting character somewhere. She's not very interesting in the finished film.
Didn't think in this era, again, of space travel, trying to guess like people's age and relations to each other will be difficult, especially if you're going on like long haul ships where you're on cryosleep for 2 to 5 plus years. You don't age when you're in cryosleep.
No, you don't.
So
it's just like going to sleep and waking
two people
up,
could be like, say if you're going on James 5 years there, 5 years back. You get home, people have aged 10 years.
Yeah, but you haven't.
Like Ripley in Alien, she's been in cryosleep for 50 years.
Yeah, not aged a day.
Yeah. I just find that really an interesting thing to start thinking about.
As a concept, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk about the temple.
The fucking set piece is incredible.
All right, let's talk about that scene, because this is
set piece.
This whole sequence, I think, is actually the start of where a lot of people's problems arise.
Whereas it's kind of like the start of my awe in.
I
love it.
Two very different interpretations, I guess.
I'll admit it's very. They go in there and the atmosphere is very heavy in CO2. Until they get inside this temple where something is, again, it's probably one of your problems with Charlie Holloway. They realizes that something has generated an atmosphere in there and the air is actually cleaner than it is on Earth. So instantly takes his helmet off.
Yeah.
I do like a bit like they asked David why he's putting on a spacesuit. It's like, you don't need it. And he's like, most humans feel uncomfortable with anything that isn't human.
Yeah.
So he's like, I do this purely to make you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I think he makes Charlie feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie
again, it's like
does
there's
not
so
like
many
David.
Great. I don't think David has a bad scene. I think I just like David just doing David things.
So interesting. Yeah.
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 He does have this ability to obviously read alien tech and work it out quite easily. I don't know if that's just a machine understanding other machines.
Yeah.
But I love it when he activates the security footage and you see the hologram of the engineers running away from some unknown entity.
Yeah, I always quite like that sequence.
Yeah.
You see the hologram.
I was thinking, like, I've never seen a hologram that looks like that.
No.
It's weird. It's like almost like pulsing and spinning. It's you can kind of see it's on the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And it was very unique.
Yeah.
And really, really cool. And it's always ones where, like, if the VFX age badly, that makes that scene kind of look better because the hologram doesn't look very...
Yeah.
It's not very clear.
Yeah.
I just find that... I think that was a design to hide the spacesuits that they have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just find that obviously it leads them to the body of a decapitated engineer.
Yeah.
And leading into the room, which... What should we call this room? Big head room?
The big head room, yeah.
It's obviously full of these urns, which is full of the magical black goo. Which you have a lot of problems with. I think a lot of the problems with the goo for people comes down to it's never really explained what it is.
Yes.
I feel like David understands what it is, but he's not going to tell anybody.
We have a basic understanding of what it is capable of doing.
From what I can gather, it's obviously it's some sort of like bioweapon that, if ingested, will break you down to your core. But if things seem to be dipped into it, it will mutate them.
But again,
it's never explained.
No, it's not.
Again,
it's not.
I don't mind not knowing. But we go in there, you got all these urns, very reminiscent of the egg scene.
Yes.
With this giant stone head.
Yes.
That
looks very human.
That looks very human, which is instantly pointed out. They look like us.
Yeah.
And I just love the set pieces. Looking at the behind the scenes, it was filmed at Pinewood on the James Bond stage.
Yeah.
They built this massive set.
Yeah.
There's a mural on the roof that we can't really understand, apart from a mural that looks a lot like a xenomorph. In the original version of the film, that was the only alien reference. One issue that people had as well, because everyone instantly assumed from the trailer that this was the same planet as Alien.
It's not.
It's not. I can't remember the numbers. It's LV-223, this one?
Yes. Yeah.
I can't remember the original one in there.
LV-426.
The film tells you straight away that it isn't, but a lot of people didn't clock on to that.
No, a lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a fault of the film. It should have made
maybe,
more
but
clear.
I clocked when I watched it straight away. I was like, oh, that's because I watched Alien before going to watch it. I was like, oh yeah, it's a different planet.
I think when I first watched it, I thought it was the same planet.
Yeah.
I think, and that's again, multiple viewings, you pick up on different things.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Again, I do like the Alien mural. That's very cool.
Oh,
It's not fully looking like a xenomorph.
Love the alien mural. Just what the hell is it doing there, guys?
I get the
Why
without
is it there?
without one alive that they can sit down and have a cup of tea with and talk to. You've got no reasons why it's there. The engineers could worship them.
We don't know.
This room to me feels like it's at the center of their religion. It's all
almost like the xenomorph is their god.
Yeah.
But again, we don't know.
We don't.
I think it's very clear that the engineers made that mural because a few people, from what it seems, have pondered that maybe the planet that they're now on was once upon a time a xenomorph planet, and the mural was something the xenomorphs did, and the engineers conquered that planet. But when you think about it, the xenomorph is not creative.
No. Also, interestingly, again, this is something you have to look into. The life cycle of your average xenomorph
is
really short because they have acid for blood, so they actually die off pretty quickly.
Yes.
And that's why on the planet in the original film, there's no xenomorphs there. The Queen, on the other hand, can live for a long time.
Yes, yeah.
But your average, like, drones or the worker bees, I think some in the second one they're called warriors.
Yeah.
Their life cycle is actually really short.
Ridley Scott said on average about 4 days.
Yeah.
About 4. When you think about from when it's born and it's a little baby and then it just expands.
Can't explain why they're so aggressive.
Yes.
Because
there's just so many hormones. It's kind of like going.
And again, acidic blood can't be good for you.
No, on average about 4 days, the life cycle of a xenomorph. Yeah.
And I think that makes. I don't believe that they conquer this planet. I believe that for me, the engineers, we will not be the first thing that they've created if they've been dabbling in like genetics and creating things. There's a chance the engineers could have created the xenomorphs.
Which I do not like. I do not like that theory.
But if we were going to encounter life, if the engineers have constantly for millions of years, thousands of years, been meddling with and creating things, if we were going to encounter something in space, there's a good chance it would have been created by them. So, for me, they either created the xenomorphs and they created something perfect, because there's a theme throughout the Alien franchise that there is a perfect organism. I have that. So the goo, just based on the effects that it kind of has, may have been made from the xenomorphs, then trying to break them down on how they work, because they could have made them by accident, or they just discovered them and were trying to work out how they work. I prefer the idea that they discovered them and kind of like us were in awe of how much of a perfect organism the xenomorph is, and that's why there's a mural to them.
Yeah. The mural has been created by the engineers. I think that's absolutely no doubt. It's just the purpose as to why you are only going to create a mural of something if you are in reverence of that thing. So yeah, it's like you're only going to make a mural of something if you are in reverence of that thing. But one of the biggest questions of this whole film is, what is the relationship of the engineers to the xenomorphs? The mural, it's only a split second, but it's clearly there. And that insinuates so much, raises so many questions that we just don't get answers to.
Well, who's going to tell them? Would you prefer it be like AVP, where they have their entire life story just carved into the wall so one guy's reading gives a massive expedition dump?
Not necessarily.
I hate stuff like that.
Not necessarily.
I hate it in AVP. Much as the flashbacks look cool, it's like, that's just stupid.
Yeah, I don't like big exposition dumps. I don't. But at the same time, I think that much of a tease deserves some kind of a payoff. And we don't get it. I don't care about big explanations. I just need a little bit of something more. And we don't get it.
I feel like
we just don't get it.
We would have found out. Just not in this film.
I personally don't like the theory that the engineers created the xenomorph. I much prefer the xenomorph to have been its own separate species. It's just existing in space. The engineers have came across it in some way, been very curious about it, maybe kidnapped a few, experimented on a few. The goo is some kind of a result of that experimentation.
I like that theory.
And the goo was ultimately a bit too powerful for the engineers. Something they couldn't handle.
The aliens do have the xenomorphs do have a weird ability to change, because a xenomorph is very much a reflection on what the host is, and that's shown by Alien 3. It's a bison that it latches onto, a bison-like thing, and that's how we get the run. I think it's a runner.
Yeah.
They call the dog aliens. Think.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So maybe they were fascinated by that. They were fascinated by its ability to change depending on what its host is.
But also, watching a YouTube video on Prometheus, someone suggested the idea, and I'd never even considered this, that the engineers created humans as hosts for the alien. We were created purely to be an alien host.
I don't know how I feel about that. It's a theory.
That is an interesting theory.
It's an interesting theory, but we don't have any...
But at the same time, when you think about that mural, it's almost kind of messianic. You know,
Yeah.
it's like its arms outstretched. That, again, you don't make a mural of something unless you revere something.
Yeah.
So if they are treating the xenomorph as something to be worshipped, it would maybe make sense they'd create a separate species as food, as
Potentially.
host. That actually interests me a bit more.
And it led on to something that I found this morning. Just kind of a link to AVP. There are actually comics, and I believe it's called Fire and Stone, which shows the predators facing off against engineers. That they are the ultimate hunt.
Ooh.
And debate, like,
Engineer
controversially,
the
the engineers are stronger than the predators.
Yeah.
Technologically, I can imagine so.
Yeah.
And it takes a predator that is an elder, so he's done many great hunts in order to gain that rank, and he just beats this engineer in a fight.
Yeah.
Because they are obviously they're very big, they're very strong.
Yeah.
The one we meet in here has been asleep for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
He's not. I don't think he's a great representation of what they were.
No.
But I just find that interesting that the engineers have continued to
It is interesting.
appear, because the predators find the same murals on other planets that Shaw found.
That is true.
So that also leads to the idea of how many other species have the engineers made?
I don't like the idea that they created the xenomorph. I really don't. I don't know why.
Do you prefer the idea of David creating the xenomorphs from
I
Covenant?
absolutely do not. It's bullshit.
Covenant-
It's absolute bullshit.
It's what I don't like about Covenant, especially. And
Yeah.
because of the mixed response to this. Like you said, it was about, the budget was what, 130 million? It made about 400?
Yeah, 400.
So it did okay. As I said, considering the size of the budget compared to like your standard Marvel film, which is usually about 150 or 200, this film holds up way better than a lot of those Marvel films do back then.
That's true.
I think that's because of how realistic, but because of the mixed message. So I know the studio interfered in this one, and the particular scene that was added at the end. The initial plans for the Prometheus sequels had to be reworked, and that's how we ended up with Alien Covenant, which is a much more alien-centric film, and it just doesn't work.
No.
It
doesn't.
To me, it ruins a lot of the mystique from this film, the interesting plot points that fans were looking forward to finding the answers to. Well, David wipes out all the engineers within the first minute of the film.
Yeah.
And I think if this race was as big and as technologically advanced as they're assumed to be, they wouldn't all be in the same place. I think they'd be spread across the universe.
Yeah.
And then David, using the goo
Magical goo.
any biological matter he can find, creates the xenomorphs. Or some have the theory that he reverse engineered them.
Yeah.
That isn't clear, but that's just bad storytelling. Covenant for me is a stain on Prometheus, and all it does is fuel reasons why people don't like Prometheus because of what it's now assumed that it leads to.
Look, I'm not a fan of Prometheus. I happily will admit that Covenant is infinitely worse.
Yeah.
Covenant is a terrible, terrible film.
Covenant for me is, I'd say it's worse than Alien Resurrection. It's worse than the human baby predator
I think you're right, actually. There's some interesting moments in Covenant. You know, the spine burster.
Oh, the spine burster, yeah. And there's some really cool horror moments in it that feel a lot like the game Alien Isolation.
Yeah. But I think what they
Again, Michael Fassbender is incredible, but what they do to his character just doesn't make any sense.
It's so stupid.
I'll do the fingering.
I'll do the fingering. It's so bad. But yeah, it's like David in this film, you were saying, he's one of the most interesting characters and borderline morally ambiguous.
When I asked you if there's anything you enjoyed more this time around, you said you felt like you understood David's motivations more.
I did, this time round.
Yeah, because he's clearly acting on Wayland's orders.
Yes.
But I think he also has his own ulterior.
He has his own ulterior motive, and he has his own complicated relationship to his own maker as well.
Yeah. And his mission is basically to find, if any of them are alive, and with the goo, because obviously he tells Wayland about what the goo, he has to try and work out what it is, so he takes one of the pods back and he starts pulling it apart, trying to reverse engineer it. So one of my favourite shots, actually, it's just a simple one, because he has a little dot of it on his finger. Obviously he's not organic, he can't get infected by anything, so he's fine just to touch things.
Yeah.
The way on his finger, you see the Wayland-Yutani stamp on his fingertips. And I really like that. So in theory, if David strangled someone to death, that's like his fingerprint there.
Yeah, the W.
But it's also that line of big things have small beginnings. I just really like that. line. But again, it's like the production design of thinking, yeah, let's have the Wayland Corporation stamped on his fingers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
It is cool.
And so he tests it. He tests it on Holloway.
Yes, he does. Thank God. Someone do something about Holloway.
But a small amount. So what we kind of end up seeing is on a very small scale what happened to the engineer at the beginning of the film who just downed a shot of it. Tiny little drop, puts it in his drink. He does technically ask his permission. Now later on he has sex with Shaw. But he starts to get very ill.
Squid baby.
Shaw can't have children.
No.
Because that's part of like the scene. It's not a good scene. It's like, anyone can throw some DNA together and make life. Apparently, he's like, well, I can't.
She says I can't.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
So he starts to get very ill when they go back the next day.
Yeah, he's infected.
And you can see he's starting to break down. There's also another cool scene where he checks his eye out and he sees like a little worm in his eye. That looks really cool.
It's like it basically mirrors what happened to the engineer at the very beginning of the film.
Just
but
slowly.
Slowly, because he's only had a drop. Yeah. Whereas obviously the engineer at the beginning had a whole cupful, so it sped up the process.
Yeah,
Holloway,
it's slowly breaking them down. They start bringing them back to ship. This is that moment I was saying with Vickers where she does the right thing here. Oh. She is not going to let him back on the ship.
No.
Because he's clearly... At this point, no one knows if he's just got an infection.
Yeah.
There's a moment later on where they start taking the helmet off and Shaw's like, well, we don't know how Charlie got infected. She assumes it's safe for the helmet off. And there's a moment where David kind of looks at her and it's clear, it's like, oh, you did this.
Yeah.
But at least a bit of it is David inherently evil, or does it come down to his not understanding human emotions and morals?
You see, I think in Prometheus, when I watch it, it's that. I do think he is a bit morally ambiguous. Mm-hmm. I think he understands emotions a lot more than he lets on.
The stakes he's willing to go to, as he inherited that from his father.
Yeah, potentially, yeah, because he does make a lot of horrible choices in the film. But
and
in Covenant, he is downright psychotic. I mean, he commits genocide.
Yes.
That's just a whole different...
It's a different character.
It is, totally different.
Well, he butchers Shaw.
Yeah, he does.
He experiments on it.
Yeah.
That Covenant... In many ways, just like The Predator, just should be scrapped from the timeline.
Yeah.
But yeah, she will not let Holloway back on the ship, and she stood there with a flamethrower.
Yeah.
And she tortures him.
She tortures him, absolutely murders him.
Devastating for sure.
Yeah.
But this is what I think the redeeming thing is, because he walks up to arms and saying, do it. Well, and she's like, you can see, she doesn't want to kill him.
No, she doesn't want to.
But he gives her no choice. And I think that is the redeeming moment for Holloway. In that moment, he knows that something has happened. He is infected with something. Because they take the engineer's head back to the lab, they experiment, and they see that it's infected with something. There's an unknown antigen in there. Antigen, is that the right word?
I think so.
There's some weird shit going on. Obviously, he is in a lot of pain, and he knows something isn't up. Or something is up, something's wrong. He cannot get back on that ship. And I think in that moment, he sacrifices himself just to save the crew from whatever has infected him.
He does. I think he knows in himself he's a goner. Like, there's no saving him at this point.
So I think
knows it would be thing.
But again, it's taken several watches for me to realise that he does sacrifice himself there.
Oh, I think I always saw that he does. It's a noble thing to do.
So he was a pretty dislikable character. That one moment, and again, in the deleted scene that follows, we have Idris Elba's character talking to Vickers about his time in the military and how someone in his command had to do something similar because she's clearly hurting from what she's done. She's not a killer.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really important scene for us to lose. But in that moment, she did the right thing.
Oh, she does do the right thing. I mean, it's a more extreme version of the scene we have in the first Alien, isn't it? Where Ripley doesn't want to let Kane and Lambert and Dallas back on to the ship because
it's the same scene, but one of them ends the way it should end.
Yes, but at the same time, Ripley is not trained in the same sense that Vickers is trained.
Yeah.
And we've established that Ripley has a very different relationship with her crew and her friends than Vickers has with Holloway and the other members of the Prometheus. It's similar, but it's different.
Yeah.
So I can totally understand why Ripley doesn't get a fucking flamethrower and tortures Kane to death on the spot. I mean, it's a different context.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is basically like a mirroring of that scene.
Yeah.
Can we talk just a bit about some of the more like overtly stupid moments that we get in the film?
Are you talking about the alien snake?
I want to talk about the alien snake And just mainly kind of about those two characters, Fifield and,
Yeah.
and Milburn. So, again, top secret $1 trillion funded mission. One of them gets fucking stoned when he gets lost. He just is, what is it, pot or something that he's just ingesting through his helmet?
I'm assuming whatever space weed is.
It's cool. You know, top secret mission. Yeah, that's very, very scientific of him to do that.
He likes rocks. He apparently likes plants
rocks. Yeah. They come across one of the dead, decapitated engineers. He
freaks out.
Petrified of that. So, of course, the most logical thing to do would be to separate from the group.
Yeah. In their mind, go back to the ship and they go, I love his little things that he sets up. Again, this is pointed out. It's like, oh, how did the person with the mapping balls not know where to go? He's not a cartographer. But I just really like the effect of them scanning the building. I think that's really cool.
You mentioned it before, the taking off of the helmets.
Yeah, it is.
It's dumb.
It is dumb.
It's dumb.
That's another thing. It's like he believes that they are going to be. It's a belief versus science again.
It is belief versus science. Still pretty dumb.
Yeah.
When they bring the alien head back, the engineer's decapitated head back, and they're, prodding it and like, oh, let's trigger the nerve endings into thing. Not one of them is wearing a face mask.
No.
In that moment. They're not wearing any kind of protective clothing. This is like a 2,000-year-old head. They've got no idea what kind of bacteria or anything is rolling around in there. Do they give a shit? No. That was another thing. The alien snake.
Yeah. I hate to have to refer to these deleted scenes a lot, but we actually have a scene that is set before this one.
Yeah, we do, and it should have been in the film.
And because they find a small, like essentially, because we see the worms when they go into the thing.
Yeah.
Them entering the chamber changes the atmosphere in that chamber, and the goo starts to like leak.
Yeah.
So the worms get infected by it, they go into it, so they start to mutate. So we see one, they initially find the first human life, and we see him talk, like, obviously...
Hey, baby.
To me, that scene with the snake, when he sees that, it makes sense when you put it in the context of he's already encountered a smaller version of it, and it kind of worked.
Yeah. He's getting excited.
I can understand
he loves his plants.
taking that out of it, him in like coming across a species for the very first time. I think he's coming at it like a snake. He's speaking to it softly, because that's how you speak to animals. They tend to take note of our pitch. It's stupid, but I don't have a problem with the scene. But I also love the payoff of the scene.
Payoff's cool.
Yeah, when it wraps around his arm, breaks his arm. He tries to cut it.
It snaps.
Acid on the face, melting the helmet, straight in through the hole. It's like, that is fucking awesome.
Could you argue, though, that it's all brought about by sheer stupidity?
Oh, yeah, it's brought about by sheer stupidity. It doesn't stop the scene from being cool.
These are meant to be two expert scientists in their own individual field, and they act like that.
Well, one of them likes rocks. Is that snake a rock?
It's not a rock.
And does he want to go...
Does the other guy's too stoned to make any kind of clear judgments.
Does the geologist, Fifield, want to go anywhere near that snake? No, he doesn't. And he only goes near it once the other guy is in absolute peril.
Both of them make stupid decisions.
Well, he gets stoned in the evening because they get stuck there overnight. Really cool scene when they see this body of, like, a pile of dead engineer bodies. Oh
yeah, he likens it to like a Holocaust or something, doesn't he? Yeah.
Which I think is what it was based off.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got stoned in the evening. When he sees that snake, the stoned one actually makes the smarter decision of why the fuck are you going near that thing?
Yes,
so he's actually the smarter one in that situation.
So
the weed argument has got nothing to do with this.
No. These are two scientists on this top secret mission, this $1 trillion funded mission, I can't say that enough, and they act like fucking children.
So?
That is not how you act in that situation. Again, it's just bad writing.
Has he, deleted scene aside, is this the first time he's ever encountered an alien? Potentially. I understand him being excited.
I understand the excitement, but, let's just touch it. Let's just touch it and let me talk to it like it's a fucking Labrador.
Again, I just don't have problems with this scene.
All right, okay.
I just don't.
Well, let's move on to the next bit, where this bit's always bothered me, where Fifield and Milburn, so they're stuck in the cave thing overnight. The captain is kind of keeping a loose eye on the situation. He's got his holographic map of the caves. We find out it's actually a ship. And he alerts them when he notices that there's apparently another life form inside there with them.
Yeah.
And he tells them this, he warns them. And of course, the two of them start freaking out, thinking, well, what the fuck? You've got to tell us more. Like, what are you seeing? The life form then disappears. And the captain's like, oh, it was a glitch. I guess it was a glitch. Don't worry, guys. Try not to bugger each other.
Well, to me,
and then just pisses off.
your issue is about him being very nonchalant about it.
I think he's too. Yeah.
I think
People say he's one of like the unsung heroes of this film.
he is.
He's a dickhead in
Also,
that scene.
Well, also, is he telling them it's potentially a glitch to calm them down? But also, because of the storm, what could they do to help them anyway? They're stuck there.
Yeah, but he's acting so nonchalant in that scene.
Yeah, but if he starts acting worried in that scene, that's going to make them more worried.
There's not a modicum of any kind of concern. He doesn't alert anyone else in the crew as what he's just seen. He then goes off to have sex with Charlize Theron.
Can you blame him?
And he doesn't... He has co-pilots. He doesn't ask either of them to take his place and keep watch over Fifield and Milburn. He just fucks off to go have sex with Charlize Theron.
Again, can you blame him?
You know that's a bad move. That is
it is a bad move. But again, it's like, I think you're pulling these scenes apart too much.
That is not Captain Lee behaviour. You wouldn't see that on the Nostromo. Dallas would not be doing that. Wouldn't happen. Oh, and the med pod is for...
Oh, that's stupid. That is stupid. I can't excuse that.
All I'm trying to say by highlighting this is that I know you mentioned earlier in Alien that John Hurt does a very stupid thing when he leans over into the egg and face hug it. Yes, obviously you don't go near the spooky looking egg when you have no idea what the spooky looking egg is capable of. That was a dumb decision. I can let that go because John Hurt and the rest of the Nostromo crew are not top scientists. They're on a freighter. Like, they're miners. They're not thinking like top scientists should. These guys have no excuse.
One of them is a fucking geologist. He does rocks.
Should have been vetted about the mission he was on then, shouldn't he?
Espionage.
No.
It's like, can I pull one point?
Yeah,
the argument that I'm so sick of everyone always bringing up with this film. It's the tech.
Oh, no.
What did you think I was going to bring up?
I thought you were going to say the running in straight line.
We'll get to that later. But everyone's like, oh, why is the Prometheus so technologically advanced compared to the Nostromo? It's actually not. It's just, to me, it's just fucking cleaner.
Well, it's a different ship.
It's a different ship. It's a scientific ship.
Yeah.
To me, it's mainly like the instruments look a bit sleeker. To me, it's a scientific expedition ship. It's going to be top of the range.
Yeah.
And the big thing is like, it's a brand new ship. To me, the Nostromo, it's a mining ship and it's a hauler. It is built to do that. It's not designed to do alone.
Yeah.
It looks pieced together with other ships. Probably when things break, they replace them with older things. Two ships for very, very different reasons. But the actual tech that we see, the Prometheus doesn't do anything that the Nostromo can't.
Yeah.
Realistically, they have the pod, like the cryopods and everything.
Yes.
Both of them don't have any weapons, so we can't see that side of it. Like, even when they get down to Earth, the way they when they get down on the planet, the way they bring the pods down to let ships out, it's exactly one's just cleaner than the other.
Well, yeah.
So this whole thing, the tech, it's the fucking same.
That's just, it's a totally different ship. It's a different time.
To me, the Nostromo, it has things to me, probably, obviously, with the film being made when it was made, my logic of this is, and I've seen a lot of people say the same thing, is when they're dealing with ore and mining, the stuff has to be made to be robust. That ship is made just to do long journeys and do science stuff. Nostromo needs to be robust because it's made to do 5-year-long trips. So I just don't think the tech thing is a valid... Also, let's be fair, the Nostromo was probably made on the cheap.
Yeah.
Because of the job that it's doing.
I think, the in-universe answer to that is, yes, it's a different ship, it's a different time. Two ships meant for two very different missions.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I can understand why it's a bit jarring.
The filmmaking answer is because this is a multi-million-dollar film and the tech obviously is there to make it look very different to the low-budget
It's just
Alien.
something that never bothered me, but it's always a lot of people's jump to defenses for why it's a shit film. And I'm like...
Alien came after this. Why does Alien look, so much cheaper and shittier compared to Prometheus?
Sorry, does a garbage truck do the exact same thing as a Ferrari?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I can't argue with that. It's that's absolutely fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And right, so the falling ship thing. I said, why did they just run the other way? I think the editing is a part of the reason of this, but if we put it down to, in that moment, fear. You pick a direction and you just fucking run.
Panic.
And you said when watching this time, you can see them change direction.
They do actually,
but also,
they go off
say
slightly.
It's this shape.
Yeah.
It's falling like that. So it hits there, and they see this bit falling. They're running like that. They're running away this way. To them, to me, if I saw that fall, I'd think, right, it's going to land on that and it's going to fall to its side.
Yeah.
if I'm going to run away this way, I'm going to avoid this, because if I run sideways, it might roll.
Yeah.
In that brief moment, I would probably run the same way. They're not expecting it to land and then roll over, and then
yeah, exactly.
And then Vickers, Vickers obviously dies here, but Shaw does run the other way.
Yeah, she does.
So
she does.
Again, that scene never bothered me, but that's the other. It's a tech and them running the wrong way.
Yeah. I feel like the running...
They're just the easy criticisms to go for that realistically I've just never had a problem with, because they're easily explained away.
The two women that can only run in straight lines. To be fair, it's one of the lesser issues that really kind of got me about this film. It's like I like how it has become such an infamous thing about Prometheus. Like, everyone likes to take a jab at that, but it doesn't actually bother me.
It almost feels as infamous
much.
as like the Scorpion King at the end of The Mummy 2, and it's like,
well, it's
not that much of an issue.
I appreciate it's fun to take a jab at it, but at the same time, it's like, if you're in that fucking situation, you're just gonna run. It's like, you're not thinking clearly, you are just gonna run.
Yeah.
And that's just like the reality of that. That scene doesn't bother me as much as it seems to a lot of other people.
Yeah. Can we talk about one scene that I think we both really liked? It's the cesarean.
Oh, yeah.
The alien baby. That scene, a lot of that is practical as well.
Yeah, it is.
Obviously, when Shaw finds out that
it's a tough watch.
She's pregnant. 3 months pregnant after only having sex the night beforehand with an alien child, due to having sex with Charlie when he was infected.
He was infected, yeah.
That whole scene, because there's so much practical elements in that. We believe that is the reason that this film is a 15, is this scene.
Yeah, it's gory.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
But there's nothing particularly scary about watching. Just what
the process.
There's no jump, scare. Yeah. This is it's just hard to watch. It's tense.
Noomi Rapace really sells it. I mean, the panic in her, and how just she's sweating, she's panicked, like the thing that
also she's fully awake while she's being lasered open.
Exactly.
I love the thing. Obviously, it's an animatronic, isn't it? And it's wrapped in a condom.
It is.
It's quite ironic because if she'd used one the day beforehand, she wouldn't be in this situation. Yeah, although I imagine the alien sperm would have just went straight through that thing.
Yeah, I mean, she can't create life. She said it herself.
Yeah,
she
why
is
would she need
infertile.
one? That whole scene, I think, is incredible.
It's really
Set design is really good, and it's just when it opens, it's the way the goo just falls down into the wound. Your instincts kind of go.
Oh, it looks like someone's vomited
and then
all over,
stapled back
wound.
together.
Yeah. Clearly, not cleaning the wound properly, and she's stabbing herself with pain relief. I assume it is.
That's another thing. Like, how's she running after just having a C-section?
Oh, look, adrenaline, man, will make you do
adrenaline, drugs, and I imagine that spacesuit is holding her together.
Yeah, she is. She wants a hug.
Yeah, she goes through some shit.
And
leaves it. Obviously, that's going to come back into her later, but she disinfects it, thinking that's going to kill it.
Yeah.
And then just leaves it in the med pod and was like, I need to fucking get out of here.
I do. Leading on from that, though, something that kind of does bug me is the fact that, first of all, she doesn't encounter anybody for a while until she goes into that room, and then she realises that Wayland is actually alive. There's no crew about.
Five-field zombie body has come back and killed a couple of people now. There is less crew.
There's less crew.
The Five-field scene, I again think the alternate version where he looks more alien-esque with longer arms, I think that looks better.
Yeah, the Five-field zombies doesn't work.
Saying that, as much as I preferred the alien design from there's a nice realism when it's just him in zombie
it's kind of
makeup, because obviously it was him. They actually got the actor on wires. They set him on fire for it. So the scene actually feels a lot more grounded. The way they've done it, it's just the design I'm not fond of.
A lot of these scenes,
but the scene when his helmet did collapse in on himself inside, I think that looks fucking amazing.
Oh, the pummel on the face mask, you mean?
No. That looks really. That's the best, definitely. Well, when he cuts the snake and
and the acid
blood
kind
on
of melts into the
and you see the face, the helmet just melt down onto his face.
Yeah,
it's
and then he falls into the goo.
It's like if you put a ready meal in into the without taking the plastic off properly, and you just see it. Yeah,
it just melts and
yeah.
It's a cool effect.
Yeah,
and both of those scenes kind of lead into, I have issues with this. An overarching issue is the goo.
Yeah,
the black goo.
It's just not explained.
It's never explained, and can just very conveniently do anything that the writers apparently want it to do. It is a big plot contrivance. I don't think we can deny that. I mean, it can. I mean,
it's kind of like I just don't care.
We see it.
I don't. I accept that that's what it does, because
that's fine.
It's a space. It's
space stuff.
Goo.
It's goo.
It's clearly been engineered. It's a bioweapon. We don't know what the effects of it
But let's just go through a few things. So at the very beginning of the film, the engineer drinks the goo and it destroys his genetics.
Yeah, we see it do the same thing to Charlie.
Yes. It can also create life because Charlie has sex with Shaw and she ends up having a squid baby.
Because we've seen it mutate. We've seen it mutate the worms. So it's, from what we can gather, if you ingest it, it can destroy you.
It can also...
If you are dipped in it, it can mutate. That is my 2 rules of what this thing can do. It mutates the worm, and it mutates Fifield.
Create a zombie, apparently. If the writers wanted to create a zombie, it can help create a weird snake plant if the writers wanted to do that.
Plant? Why is a plant thing?
It kind of looks like a plant.
It looks like a snake.
It's
a worm that turns into a snake.
Alien, weird facehugger snake thing, like a baby.
It's cool design and a really good practical as well. It's a mixture of practical and CGI in certain scenes.
My point is that the goo can literally do so many things.
When you list it, it's actually not that many things. It's like 3 things that it can do.
If it's convenient. But even so, it's like if you break
it's very inconvenient for all the characters.
It's inconvenient for the characters. But even when, trying to think scientifically here, even something that is foreign and alien, it still has to abide by certain biological laws, doesn't it?
But these are biological laws that we just might not have encountered yet. Something we don't understand.
There needs to be a rule as to what it can do and what it can't do. And this goo seems to be able to do anything.
3 things. It can do 3 things.
It can create, it can destroy, and it can mutate.
You're saying it creates. It doesn't create. The act of sex is what creates. Because he's breaking down and his sperm is obviously kind of weirdly infected by it. It doesn't create. The fact that it's in him is what creates it. It doesn't just create it of its own back.
Anyway. The goo is unexplained at the end of the day.
Just like many things in this film.
Just like too many things.
But it doesn't just do everything like you're assuming that it does. It does a set amount of things. It can destroy and it can mutate. It actually only does 2 things. Does 2 things.
Would you agree that maybe a silly thing is allowing the zombie Fifield inside the ship?
Oh yeah.
I don't think there's any justification.
But they also, when they open the door, they don't all they say is, oh, his helmets came online outside. So they'll just go outside expecting to see his helmet. Yeah,
but then as soon as they see his body contorted into that weird shape and the guy just decides to stroll right over.
Yeah, he's a security guy. He goes to have a look.
He goes to have a look.
Okay. Don't have as many issues as everybody else seems to with this one.
Sure.
I feel like people need to come up with issues with this film just to justify not liking this film.
There are a lot of dumb decisions these characters make.
Yeah.
But it's like I was saying at the beginning,
the whole reason the Titanic sank is because of dumb decisions. People make dumb decisions.
Didn't have binoculars. Also, yes, I
going
agree.
too fast in the middle of the night.
The captain was going too fast in an ice field.
Didn't have the key. Set off without the key for the binoculars.
Man is flawed.
And that's not even just based on film. That's real life stupidity.
Man is flawed.
Not having enough lifeboats. Real people do stupid things. So in film, people are allowed to do stupid things.
I understand that. I do.
I'm pulling your favourite film into this.
Don't you dare! Don't you tarnish that film.
Yeah. Well, not even just a film. The real event. People do. I think people doing stupid things, isn't an excuse isn't a reason for the film being bad. People inherently do stupid shit. We know people.
Yes, I know that.
History is filled with people doing stupid shit. Even best people in their field do stupid shit.
I don't think it contextualizes it for this film enough, though. These, again, are expert people in their field.
That all do stupid shit. Like
all
people.
Of them
Is it just? Does it just add in more to this idea of why they were disappointed in us?
Would you I know?
Are they all meant to be stupid?
They shouldn't be,
because they're all flawed. Again, they are disappointed in their creation. We are flawed beings.
Again, Prometheus, there are issues I have with the ideas about the film. Its ambition, I do think it is quite pretentious. The whole biblical, the whole religious questions that it asks and they don't answer. But then also, there are just standard filmmaking issues. The script. There are some bad... There are bad dialogue. The characters aren't fleshed out enough. And I know... Now, having seen a lot of the deleted scenes, there was a little bit more backstory with the characters, a few more interesting scenes with the characters.
We'll never say this film is perfect.
What we see in this film is a very, very flawed film. It's I don't know.
But it's you have film. If you go back to something like even the original Star Wars trilogy, the dialogue is not great in those films, but they are almost considered to be perfect films.
Yeah.
To me, this film is flawed. But those flaws, for me, don't inherently make it a bad film.
See, it's like, we're saying I can't really compare it to Alien in this sense, because I don't think any of the characters in Alien make a bad decision, really. They all react to it kind of how you would imagine, a sensible person might react to that
I mean, bringing
situation.
the person with an alien parasite on their face back to your ship.
That's what Ash lets him in. It's not Ripley, it's Ash.
But
that
they
lets
still
him
tried
in.
to bring him back.
Yes.
They brought it on the ship.
They did bring it on the ship with the intention of quarantining.
With the mission that they are doing, should they have gone down to the planet in the first place?
No, but what was it? It was an it was an SOS.
As soon as they saw that it was an
warning.
alien ship.
It was a warning, but they interpreted it as an SOS.
Yeah. As soon as they saw that it wasn't a vessel of theirs, they should have left.
Yes. I know that. I do appreciate that. And again, in Aliens, you have a lot of other characters doing dumb decisions as well.
Yeah.
But in Aliens...
I mean, like, send them in there and tell them they can't fire because of where it is.
Exactly. And
Aliens is also considered a perfect movie, though. People do stupid things.
People do stupid things, but I think it helps where you have characters that do stupid things have a bit of a redemptive arc.
But in real life, people don't always get redemptive arcs.
Are you honestly saying that these characters in this film are really memorable, great characters?
I remember them. Sometimes I forget their names. But...
I think, honestly, I could forgive this film for a lot if I enjoyed watching these characters a lot more. There's not enough time spent with them. There's too many there to pay any real attention to.
Enough of the characters. I really enjoy...
decisions.
I enjoy Elizabeth Shaw as a character, and I love following her. I love David as a character, and I every time I watch him, I really enjoy what he's doing and thinking about why he's doing it. Those two alone are enough to keep me interested in this film.
Yeah. Would Covenant have maybe been better if it was just those two again?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Why didn't she come back for Covenant? Was she unavailable? I think
she was unavailable. Oh. Yeah, God, there's so much that we still haven't even talked. We haven't even talked about like later on when the giant squid baby grows up. Do we need to go like? All right, there's one thing I'm going to say that I don't like, and I know this was a studio thing wanting to make it more linked to Alien, the Deacon.
Yeah,
the giant squid baby grows up, and Shaw ends up using it to defeat this very pissed off engineer who's really annoyed because he tried to take off. To me, he wasn't. Was he necessarily going back to Earth, or could he have been going home? We don't know what changes he made. Could have been going to finish the mission.
Yeah.
Shaw asks, because Idris Elba's character makes it very clear that none of that goo can get back on the ship. Mm. It cannot come back to Earth with him. This is why I think he's a bit of the unsung heroes. He's very dismissive of a lot of the characters, but he has his morals of, we cannot bring this stuff back. And she tells him, like, look, it's like, if we don't stop him, Earth will be destroyed. There won't be a home to go back to. And we have three characters right there that instantly are ready to sacrifice their lives right there to save Earth.
It's a shame.
And people back home are never going to know about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to call it post-credit because it is after the film ends. We see the engineer's body convulsing and it gets really cool effects. Mm-hmm. The Deacon coming out, and you see it's definitely an early form of Xenomorph. It doesn't do anything for me.
It's stupid.
And that was entirely a studio decision.
It's stupid. Shouldn't have been there. You can completely tell it was just shoehorned in as like a last-ditch attempt to link it to Alien.
The effects look really cool. The way like its back head splits through and breaks him up. I'm like, but the whole thing, like when the giant squid does attack the engineer, that is really cool.
It is. It is cool. But also, when you say it's an early form of alien, how do we know that? Because if we're going off the basis that the aliens have been around for thousands of years,
well, distant cousin.
Distant cousin.
I remember loads of people before Covenant had theories that was going to be that thing was going to be like it's what the young queen looks like, and it was going to get on the ship with them. People got dead excited about theorizing where the films were going to go, and then Ridley kind of lost his nerve.
Yeah, Ridley Scott has a lot to answer for.
Yeah, I wish he'd been able to do the trilogy he wanted to do.
Sometimes when yesterday when we were watching it, and you know the squid baby and how it's just contained in Vickers's thing, that room. None of the other characters have any scenes with it aside from Shaw. I don't even think any of the characters are even aware that thing is.
No, I think because for me, the movie starts moving on pretty quickly from there.
It does. It's like, we've got to finish this film, guys. Let's just speed this along.
I know. We should probably start speeding this along because this is our longest video so far.
Yeah.
And it's still like I feel like we could do another one talking about it when we do encounter the the living engineer who's been in cryosuit for 2,000 years. Again, the extended version of that scene is actually better, I think.
Yeah.
But the scene we got, I also do really like, and David does manage to speak to him. He basically says, this man has came to you. Again, the fact that people actually enjoyed this film enough to translate it. But I think it was actually the person who is in the scenes early, when David's watching lessons and someone's teaching it's actually him because he's actually a linguist.
Oh, is that guy?
Yeah, it was actually him that translated it. He said what it was. He says, like, this man has came here because he wants to live forever, and you can give him that. I think I'm paraphrasing that a little bit. And the engineer kills him.
Yeah, straight.
Rips David's head off. Because if you'd just been asleep for like 2,000 years and you wake up and suddenly the species you were about to destroy are there, you instantly, because Shaw's screaming at him, they beat her down. All they're doing in that instance is proving to him
humanity has not changed.
That we have not changed.
That's what I mean.
I do really like that scene. And
the deleted scene was better.
Oh, it was longer as well.
It was longer. What we get in the film. But
again, it's like, because you could always tell, like, because it was spliced in with like shots that were used in the actual film, so the way to tell apart was they weren't graded.
Yeah.
The lack of VFX in that shot is just impressive. Really impressive.
It is impressive. I also like hearing the engineer speak. He actually engages
in
dialogue
actually just
in
speaks,
the deleted scene as well.
I haven't even talked about like my cinema experience seeing this.
You got to.
Because the scene where David makes it into the deck.
Yeah.
Like, the deck, is it the deck?
It's like the cockpit, I guess.
Yeah. The bridge. The bridge.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. And he, using the security footage, manages to work it out. You see the massive chairs and the hologram. So he opens up the navigation system. In IMAX 3D when I first saw this. That's how anticipated I was for this. I paid that money to see it. I have never seen anything that looks as good since. The 3D actually looked really good because they had like the star systems actually coming out to us. It gave it some great depth. Obviously on set they must have lights that were moving around to light David because he stood in the middle of it. And it just looked, the production design was really good. The effects were really good. The scores were good. They just built this really, really cool but also very personal moment for Dix. He's the only person that ever sees this moment. That's purely for him when he literally holds the earth
it's like
in his hand.
Wonder
Childlike wonder, which he's probably just experiencing for the first time. But he literally, considering he sees himself as a superior being, holds our planet in his hand.
Yeah.
And then it all just turns off. And I saw it like a week later just on a regular screen. I saw this twice. And I was still just blown away. But that IMAX experience, I don't like when we talk about cinema experiences, that was a great one for me. Just as like a scene that has just not been surpassed. And there's no dialogue in that scene.
No, there isn't. The score's nice.
Just the score alone is telling you the wonder that David is experiencing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think scenes like that just don't get the appreciation. And I think there's several scenes similar to it that are just like, you just have to watch and take them in. It's when the dialogue starts that people start having issues with things.
Yeah, it's when the dialogue kicks in. Plot points that are introduced that don't really have a lot of resolution, don't go anywhere. Like,
we can always say, again, I know I can't rely on this too much as an answer. There was supposed to be, we don't know if any of these plot points were initially going to be answered.
Well, that's the thing.
Which is the big issue. As a film, on its own, I still really enjoy it, even if things aren't going to be answered. And I like how it's not a direct prequel to Alien. It's just, to me, events that are happening within the Alien world.
Alien world, yeah.
But it's like, my question for you is like, we watch a lot of movies. Would you say this movie is a bad movie? Do you have problems with it? But you saying, are you watching? No, this is just a bad film.
Yes and no.
It's either one or the other.
I don't. Again,
there can be good movies that have issues that don't make them great. But you can't watch this and think like content has some great performances, some great effects, production design, an interesting story that has led to people debating about it for 10 years. Can you actively say that that's a bad movie then?
But when I weigh up,
and is it the worst in the? It's not the worst in the franchise.
No, it's not the worst in the franchise. But when I weigh up the bad dialogue, the unanswered questions, the lack of likable or even interesting characters for the most part.
For the most part, there are likable and interesting characters.
For the most part, they are dumb characters. Again, just personal
Yeah.
opinion. Stupid characters that make stupid decisions, not necessarily that likable. Plot points that go nowhere. Questions that are asked and there's no resolution to them.
But that's the point.
Big,
You're missing the big
grandiose
point.
ideas.
The big point is that they were never going to get answers if they went there. We as the audience aren't getting the answers because they were never going to get the answers themselves. It's like those big questions that we all have about religion, where we came from. We aren't going to get answers for that. We can chip away at it over however many years, but that is the point of the film, is inevitably pointless because we were never going to find out.
I understand
within this film.
I understand that. But then I think, again, personal preference, I suppose, but I don't care about the species of alien called the engineers. I don't care about them. If they made us, if they didn't make us, like why they wanted to destroy us, I don't care about it. So
but
we're following a character.
There's something stopping you from ultimately saying that it's a bad movie.
A bad movie in the sense of to an extent, yeah, it is well made. It is well made.
Yeah, well acted in parts.
In parts. It's not a strong screenplay.
The fact that we've managed to talk for probably what is well over an hour at this point about a film which we've also talked about a lot over the past 4 years. We've watched several times. I've had many debates with people over times. What is it about the film that keeps people talking about it? And I think if the film was just actively bad, people would just agree that it's actively bad and there'd be a small minority saying, no, it's an unsung hero. There's something about this film that warrants discussion. Even 10 years later.
Yes, because it does... As I say,
I just don't think we'll ever get a film like this again.
That do ignite debate for the most part. Religion is something that everyone debates about. Where we came from is something people debate about. I like how it
doesn't force the religion down your throat.
No, but it's there.
It's there.
It is.
And I think if they did include the thing of Jesus was an engineer, that is forcing. But I think a lot of films that bring religion into it do start to get a bit preachy. The characters may be a bit preachy in it, but the film itself isn't forcing you. But this is the way it is. It's just a theory.
Yeah.
There's even lines in the film. It's like when David says to Holloway when he's obviously disappointed, was like, "Oh, are you disappointed that your thesis was wrong?" He's kind of shocked by that, annoyed by it. He's like, "Well, that's the point of it being a thesis. It can be wrong."
Let's agree to disagree.
But you've still not been able to say that it's a bad movie.
I'm not saying it's a good movie.
But it's not an outwardly bad movie.
Oh, God, but to me, a good film needs to have good characters. It needs to have a good plot.
It does have some good characters.
Resolution. It needs to have questions that it asks. It needs to have answers to them. And there's just not enough there for Prometheus. There just isn't.
But what keeps bringing you back to watching it?
Because I'm trying to understand it a little bit more.
So there's enough in that film for you to want to try and understand it?
I want to try and answer a few of the questions that I've had ever since I first watched it.
I also do actively believe that a lot of people who had issues with this film, a lot of those issues could have been resolved if the trilogy could have been finished. It's not an excuse, but again, a lot of the issues that people have with this film, they aren't issues to me. Obviously, that could be down to personal preference, but also I've discussed and thought about this film for a long time. Again, the lot of issues that people have is, the running, the tech. They just aren't issues to me, and I think they are very easily just explained away.
Yeah.
The video we watched yesterday, the Cinema Wins, I think, said there actually aren't any plot holes in this film. They're just things that you need to think about. They're plot holes in extent that life has plot holes. Things aren't always explained. Things don't always have to make sense.
And I do understand, and like I said,
life is inevitably pointless.
Like I said,
just like the events of this film, in that scope, they are pointless.
Life is kind of pointless. If we were just a petri dish, regardless if we were made for another species as food,
people on Earth don't know that they were created by something. They don't know that we were just about destroyed by them. They don't know that this crew sacrificed themselves. Does that mean the events of what happened on that moon pointless?
It all is pointless.
Yeah, that's the point. That is the point. The point is that it's pointless.
We're following characters that are so absolute in trying to get answers that I personally don't care about. I'm satisfied with my own answers. So when Shaw at the end is like, we've got to know why, we've got to know why. No, we don't.
She needs to know. We might not need to know, but she needs to know.
Don't need to know it. And again, is the film maybe just, does it ask too many big questions than it could ever even possibly answer? And yeah, I think it did. I think Prometheus was an interesting idea.
Do you agree when I say?
I just don't think maybe it was executed well.
We will never get another film like this.
I don't think Ridley Scott will ever go near this again.
Because he's done other films like Blade Runner. I've got issues with Blade Runner, but it did ask a lot of questions about humanity.
Yeah, I think it's clearly something
Prometheus,
that interests Scott.
Did like I said, we will never get a film that asks these types of questions. Well, I just don't think we get films that are made like this anymore.
No.
Studios, I don't think are willing to take the risk on.
What kind of like inherently philosophical? Or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think studios are willing to take the risk because for like 400 million, it's decent, but you gotta look at the Avengers the same year, which made $1 billion. Films now, if you don't make at least 700 million, aren't classed as box office smashes.
Yeah, that's true. That's
So
true.
for the size of this film and the property that's a part of it, it probably actually did underperform, even if it did make a profit. I don't think studios will take a risk on a film like that again, especially considering Covenant didn't do as well. When the studio got involved and think that they knew why this underperformed, they inevitably made a worse film.
Yeah. I will say, as much as I've been kind of barraging the characters in Prometheus,
They're better than they are in Covenant by a mile.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Danny
Hey.
McBride couldn't save that movie.
Today, James Franco would sink a film, and he's not even the worst part of this film, and he's only in one scene.
He's literally, isn't he killed off like instantaneously?
Yeah, and this is
He's in-
before the drama. The characters in that film make so much worse decisions
Yes,
than
they
the
do.
characters in this film.
They do. Ridley Scott did not learn from his
I don't think
mistakes.
Ridley Scott wanted to make this movie.
No.
There's still some really interesting visuals.
You know what is interesting though? Everything we've just talked about and debated came from that. Came from that.
You know what? Do people seem to have an issue with the fact that there's someone in that suit? Because I don't think people do.
I think for the most part, people just assumed that was the skeleton. You know, the elephantine
Yeah.
skull. People thought that was the exoskeleton. But obviously Prometheus changed the game when it was like, oh no, that's actually a helmet.
Yeah. And
There's someone inside.
I thought that was fascinating.
interesting.
Yeah.
But this is where it all began.
Yeah. Again, I love the design. Again, I enjoyed returning to that world and seeing the design of it
Yeah.
with the scale and the budget that they couldn't do in the original. Like the chamber in the original one looks great, but this, again, the set pieces, I'm just in awe. I'm in awe of them, and in awe of like the production of this film.
Yeah.
And it's why I think it still looks. I said you could release it in cinema today. Put a bunch of people who've never seen it before in a cinema screen, put it on, and I guarantee they'd think it was made today.
Looks good. It does look good.
Sounds great.
I
do
want
you-
to go.
What?
I want to go and watch Alien now.
I always want to watch Alien. Because we have to do some. I didn't think Prey would be the first Predator film we did. I didn't think this would be
No.
the first Alien one we ever did.
But it's the anniversary. It's 10 years.
Yeah. I think you got to let us know in the comments. I know, because this was basically requested by subscribers. If you're still here,
This was a long time coming between you and I as
Yeah.
well.
I can guarantee I've missed a few things.
I think I've probably missed a few things too.
Because there's a lot of plot points that we haven't even picked up on.
Yeah.
It's a weird point of this film that I always make is the film is so much more interesting to talk about. The conversations it brings up are almost
Yeah.
more interesting than the film itself. Is that the point?
Yeah.
Is that what Ridley wanted us to do? He will never make another movie on the scale of this again.
I don't think he will. I don't think he will.
But I do believe that this film is, even if you disagree with those certain things, I think the hate that it receives is a bit unwarranted.
There are worse films out there for sure.
Even in this franchise.
In the franchise, absolutely.
So I'd put it above Alien Resurrection.
I mean, I do think, yeah, that's probably fair.
But I say to me as a movie, if you've never seen an Alien film before, I think you still get a lot out of this film.
I think between the two of them, Prometheus and Covenant, Prometheus is still the more interesting of the two.
Oh God, yeah,
Films.
it's better constructed movie than Covenant.
Even though Covenant is, by all accounts, an alien film, it's a xenomorph film. You can't deny it. Prometheus is still more interesting.
Yeah.
Covenant was.
Do you think they believed that because Alien wasn't in the title, that's part of the reason it underperformed?
It could have, but I do remember
interesting
this
'cause,
being
again,
marketed
in the alternate-
as like an alien prequel.
See, initially Ridley wasn't marketing it. He said it wasn't, and eventually said yes, it is.
Yeah.
I think he was told he had to do that.
See, that's why I think like a lot of people went to see it thinking, "Oh, we're gonna, the alien, we're gonna
So
see
no, initially
aliens again, guys."
because
And we
again,
got
a line in the
this
scene
bald
when
guy right here.
there's a line of David says when he talks to him, oh, what did he say? And he said he doesn't really have a word for it, but it's supposed the closest thing we have is paradise. Trying to describe where they're from. The working title for, and there's interviews with Ridley Scott when he's promoting the film saying he's working on a new one. He calls it Alien Paradise Lost. It was the original name for Covenant, which makes more sense with that alternate scene. I don't know why they changed the opening as well. I don't see the point. That was a studio one apparently. They didn't like the idea that they preferred the idea of a soul engineer sacrificing himself rather than a group of them watching and making it look like they are sacrificing him.
Interesting.
It-
Okay.
I think both work. To be honest, I think that
Yeah.
the ship that's in the background, again, no one asked questions about that. I think it's just a really cool design. In fact, it looks like a pebble. But yeah, I think we've bored people enough with this one.
Are we going to wrap up?
I think so.
Happy birthday, Prometheus. Happy 10th birthday.
Happy 10th birthday. You
I
ignite
still
this type
feel
of
the
discussion
same.
10 years in. But why do you keep watching it?
Because I want to understand
You want-
it more. And I know it's one of your favourite films.
It is. I love this
Do you know,
film.
I was saying this yesterday, the irony is, as much as I kind of lambast this movie, it's still quite a special movie for us because we've been talking about this since literally the day we met.
Nearly 3 years ago.
Yes.
So it's part of your life and it's not going to be the last time you watch it.
Rightly or wrongly, it is part of my life.
And it's now part of the channel's life. As we're coming up to the 1 year anniversary of the channel.
And our
Yeah,
third year.
let us know
anniversary.
where you stand,
Yeah.
what side you are on for this film,
Yeah.
and where do you rank this amongst the Alien franchise?
Where do you rank it? And also, if the whole point was it was meant to be seen as a kind of standalone movie, what do you just think of it as a movie full stop?
Thanks for stopping by, guys. That was a lot. I have to edit this.
And watch the skies.
Yeah, if there's a break for a few weeks, it's probably because of
It's
this.
probably because Dave was having a nervous breakdown in the editing room.
Yeah. We will see you next week. And just remember, big things have small beginnings.